Do you remember your earliest comic book experience?
Oh shit, man, we're gonna just jump right into it. All
If
right.
you want, we
Jeez.
can chit chat a little bit, but
No, it's fine. Yeah, I don't know. It was either Mad or Cracked or some Elvira magazines.
hmm
I used to watch horror movie, like late night horror movies with my grandma, and I think Elvira was the host on USA or something when I
I
was a
remember
kid.
that. Yeah, for sure. You read
Uh,
a heavy metal magazine at all?
I am now. I
Yeah,
wasn't back then. It was probably a little too pervy for me back then, but
definitely was. That was the good stuff, though. As a little
yeah.
kid.
Well, now it is. Now it is because I'm more into like the uh Euro,
hmm
like the Euro guys.
hmm
So now I'm like deep into that. I mean, I could kind of do without. I mean, it's some of it's like written for like teenage boys, but
Definitely.
in terms of like the art and like like a lot of the Mobius stuff and like I'm deep into Droulet right now and Phil
Huh?
Casa, who are
I don't
all
know if
like,
I'm familiar.
yeah, they're all the you would recognize them. They're the Metal Hurlant guys that they got sort of imported into heavy metal.
Oh, like that style? Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
like Droulet does Lone Sloan, or I think it's called
hmm
Lone Slain. I don't know, I can't remember how it's pronounced. I think it's Sloan.
The European
Uh,
stuff goes really deep. It seems like
yeah.
it's just a never-ending well.
Yeah.
You can just keep diving and keep going down the rabbit hole of that stuff, and it's just so sophisticated. Even if with some of the themes are childish and the writing is, I don't want to say misogynistic, but just from the man, the alpha male point of view, or the repressed male point of view, but the artwork kind of makes up for that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean the writing's a little bit like, I don't know, Playboy magazine style or something a lot of times, but
Yes.
when they get away from that, it's great. The art is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like it's weird. It's interesting having a shift in perception about comic books from like a Western American,
Mhm.
like you just think that that's all there is. And
Yes.
then once you start looking at like the European stuff, there's like a zillion European things that never got imported over here that are incredible. And then if you go further to Japan, it's like a whole nother industry. And I'm not super deep into like the manga stuff, but I mean, even just scratching the surface of that stuff is wild. Like all the stuff you can find.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's cool about comics is that you can discover things seemingly your whole life, and it also moves with where you are in life. It moves with your tastes, and um, once you kind of crack through the barrier of it not being for children in your own mind, like saying to yourself, "Oh, this isn't just something for teenagers." You really open yourself up to experience just wonders of storytelling, wonders of art, and pictures and just visuals as a whole. Like there's some comics where there's really no writing, but you can enjoy it from an artistic perspective. There's some comics where the art isn't great, but the writing is brilliant. And then, there's all sorts of things that throughout your life you can discover and rediscover and expand with. So that's why I actually love the medium. I think it's a fantastic medium. And
Oh
it's something,
yeah.
go
I
ahead.
mean, I think to some extent too, like people in the US are a bit handicapped when it comes to this stuff because you're only presented this like teenage idea. And maybe things are sort of like shifting away from that with graphic novels and all of that kind of stuff. And definitely like publishers like Fantagraphics, I think like really push the medium to like an adult perspective.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's hard. I think it's hard for like a lot of new people coming into it, younger people coming into it. You still have to like dig to find that like meteor
Mhm.
stuff.
You think the internet has helped with that? Like
Oh
Instagram
yeah,
has helped with that, right?
yeah,
'Cause
absolutely. But I mean, it's hard for me to say because I'm an old person, so it's like I probably use the internet differently than a younger person might, but like my perspective a lot of times whether it's like comics or music or whatever, is like there's so much information out there at your fingertips. Sometimes it's like overwhelming. It's
Yes.
like sensory overload. It's hard to sort of like sift through, all the flotsam and jetsam to like get to like the good stuff. I think can be kind of difficult, but
And
I don't
also,
know. Once you find a certain thing, you sort of like pull on a thread. I think you can kind of figure some stuff out.
yeah. Do you remember when you discovered like the direct market? Are there good? There must be great comic shops in Louisiana, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a good one, a few good ones right now in New Orleans.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I get, I guess the Mad Crack is probably like, I think probably Crack is probably, or the Elvira stuff is probably like the first exposure to comics, and then it was like Spinner Rack at the Time Saver,
Uh-huh.
like randomly grabbing X-Men and randomly grabbing New Mutants, and this was like the mid to late 80s.
Mhm.
So it was like basically when it was like the Claremont, Silvestri, and then Jim Lee run of X-Men,
Mhm.
and right when Liefeld was coming on the New Mutants. So it's like all the like sort of Image founding guys, like was kind of my entry level into like the superhero stuff. So it was basically like Time Saver, and then there was a comic shop.
My first exposure was totally on the spinner rack.
Yeah, it was like Spinner Rack at Time Saver, and then the baseball card shop I went to get baseball cards and Garbage Pail Kids when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
Was also was a comic shop. It was family books and comics was what it was. I think originally it was like a science fiction fantasy bookstore.
Oh wow,
Comic shop.
cool.
And then they got into like trading card, like baseball cards and trading cards when like the baseball card stuff was like, huge. And then when that sort of teetered out and comic books were getting real big, they kind of got way back into the comic books. And it just so happened that it was like a spot right next to a Blockbuster Video. And so like every Friday when I was in middle school, my mom would bring me and my sister after school to grab a video from Blockbuster. And at some point when I had gotten into comics, I started gravitating towards the comic book store. So they'd go get videos and I would kind of go in the comic book shop and grab a couple comic books.
Oh man, your weekend set. You got Blockbuster in the comic shop. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was awesome. I mean, at one point it was like when I got deep into when I was like 13, or 10 or 12 or 13, super deep into comics. At that point I was getting an allowance. I was doing chores all week and had like an income basically.
Great.
So Friday would roll around, it'd be payday. I'd go to the comic book shop. I'd buy a stack of comics. Back then they were like $1 or whatever,
Exactly.
75 cents or $1. And so I could grab, with $10 I could get like 10 comics. We'd go home and we'd park in the driveway. Everybody else would go in the house and I would just sit in the car and read comic books for 2 hours.
Amazing.
And Friday nights were also, I think, at one point there were pizza night at our house.
Oh
so
man.
It'd be like I sit in the car, read comic books till the pizza came, and then eat pizza, and then watch whatever video we got and whatever. So yeah, it was sick. Great job.
Do you remember what storyline was around then? You mentioned it was the Image guys, but what were you getting at the comic shop? Were you still into X-Men and stuff, or just whatever the
yeah. I mean, I was into X-Men basically till Claremont left. So when I started reading it was Inferno. Mm-hmm. It was like the first or second part of Inferno and X-Men. And then concurrently I was grabbing the classic X-Men. So I was reading, it started with like the Silvestri Claremont Inferno stuff and the Claremont Byrne Dark Phoenix stuff. I was basically reading them at the same time. And grabbing New Mutants because I love the Liefeld stuff on New Mutants. Yeah. And were those all, I think those were all the X books at the time.
It was like X Factor too, right? Was X Factor?
X Factor. But I didn't like X Factor. I didn't like it. Was like a little too. Basically until Will Spertasio came on X Factor, I wasn't really reading it. I love all those Image guy. I love those. Now when I kind of go back on that stuff, like I can't even read it. Like when all those Image books were coming out, I love consuming that stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's like I can barely look at it.
Yeah, we seem to be from the same like era when it comes to this stuff. If probably not close to the same age, but it seems to me like what's great about being into that Image stuff for the time, because I'm, a lot of your storylines with mine, is that was also the time when I realized like my first little glimpse of like, oh, there's more to comics, because you had the kids like us into Image, like full force into Image. And the backlash of that kind of made me see, it didn't make me go there at the time, but it made me actually realize like, oh, there's a whole other set of people that don't like Image, and we're kind of separate now. And it was a generational divide. And that was kind of the first time that I realized that there's a greater environment, if not ecosystem, to comic books. But yeah, I'm right with you. I was collecting all that stuff. Spidey was my guy. I wasn't really into X-Men. My brother was into X-Men. That stuff was heavy for a kid. Like Fall of Mutant stuff, Chris Claremont stuff was heavy drama. And it took me a while to kind of get involved. My brother would talk about it. And when he would talk about it, his eyes would widen. It was as if he was talking about like Shakespeare or something, the drama involved with the Claremont era. Were you bagging and boarding too then, or were you stacking?
Back then. But I had, I was deep in X-Men, and I would tape them up on the wall. Yeah. So like I had them in order, like tape, like a whole wall, just like covered in that Claremont and Uncanny X-Men stuff. Spider-Man. I came in Spider-Man kind of late, because I don't think I really started reading Spider-Man regularly until the McFarlane Spider-Man, just Spider-Man came out. And then I kind of worked my way backwards and sort of started picking up a lot of his Amazing Spider-Man, and then loved all the Eric Larson stuff. Like those old fogies that didn't like it, like I didn't care. Like who cared? You know what I mean? Like if at the time it felt like the stuff they were doing was like the cool stuff, and all the other stuff was just sort of like antiquated, and I didn't want to read those old comics anyway, so it was like whatever.
And it just jumped off the page. It was something to it that there's nothing. Even there are incredible artists, but at the time, the way that those guys hit, I had never seen anything like it. Like it was just a pure revelation. And I've come to realize, like, we talk about how, like lousy the writing is. And it's like, like it's okay that was an era that was completely just focused on the artwork. I think that's okay. McFarlane was not a great writer. When Jim Lee took the comic book over from Claremont, it took it downhill. It went downhill. I mean, Liefeld is just incoherent, like from the jump, But I think that's okay that, that era was just focused on the artwork. It's almost like a capsule of time.
Well, I don't know. Yes and no. I mean, to me, it always kind of sucks, because I wish you can see glimpses of how their stuff could have been incredible if they had been paired with the right writer. I think Claremont was such a heavy-handed writer at the time, and sort of didn't want to. He was writing to write a story.
Yes.
Whereas when you're writing a comic, you also have to keep in mind the artist you have, and sometimes if the artist can't adjust the art to the story, you need to adjust the story to the artist. You know what I mean? And I think back then there wasn't that.
No, there was not synergy. You look at those early Jim Lee X-Men books, and the word balloons are just huge.
I mean, Claremont's not a great, and I still have a pretty thick run of it. Like I lost a lot of my comics at one point in a flood, but I actually still have all the X-Men stuff, and I've actually been kind of filling out a little bit of the older run recently, but I'm almost like hesitant to go back and read those stories, because I feel like they have a certain shine in my memory, but I think when I start reading them, I'm gonna not like the Claremont writing. I like the ideas and I like the plot points, but you know, and it'll sort of always be near and dear to my heart. But I have a feeling that it's just even a lot of the older stuff is not going to stand up the way it is in my memory.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
And also keep in mind, like we talk about that era, the image era. We also have Daniel Clowes getting up to speed. I think that's like 91. He's full force in 8-ball. Like he's full on 8-ball. You have Love and Rockets going. You have a lot of Sandman was I think breaking out at the time. Vertigo was jumping off. You have all the Alan Moore stuff. But again,
I mean, that's the thing. There's always been cool stuff
Yes.
happening and going on. There always has been, even in American comics. But you know, I just wasn't paying attention to that stuff then. And sometimes that stuff would sort of pop through over the years. Like, you know, I was still in high school when I read Watchmen. You know, one of my buddies got Watchmen and we were passing it around, and some of that other Alan Moore stuff. And I remember when the Grant Morrison run of X-Men came out. You know, and that even that as a superhero comic, I thought was awesome. The Klaus stuff, I remember because of Ghost World, and you know, my buddy that had read Watchmen was reading the Chris Ware stuff,
right?
You know, so there was certain stuff that would just sort of like pop through. Discovering Barry Windsor Smith was a big. I'm like a huge Barry Windsor Smith fan.
Did you read Monsters?
Oh yeah,
incredible.
Yeah. I'm working on a Barry Windsor Smith fanzine.
Oh man.
Yeah, like 100 pages timeline of his career.
That's incredible.
I'll send you one if I ever finish it.
Oh, that'd be great. I just actually also got the Treasury edition of Weapon X, like the oversized one. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome. He's actually I've read in some interviews he's got like 50 pages of unreleased Weapon X material.
Wow.
Like a whole nother like
wow.
2 comics worth of shit. But
Monsters was not an easy read at all.
Yeah.
It was masterful, but I'm hard pressed to recommend it to somebody because it's such a hard read. But I have to give them a caveat that like it's just completely masterful.
Yeah. I mean, I love all of Barrett. There's very little of his stuff that I don't like. I like almost everything. Love it. Was obsessed with. That's kind of what got me back into comic books recently. Was like I randomly picked up. I don't know. I was looking at something. I was looking at some Barry Windsor Smith comic, and then I randomly went and looked at the Comic Books Journal interview he did with Gary Groth. That's like, so, you know, all those Comic Books Journal interviews are like insanely long. It's like 30 pages or something. It's like insane. But
and Gary digs in.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll just be talking shit half the time. But yeah, I mean, so a lot of stuff he was saying in that interview was just echoing thoughts I had in terms of like music issues I was having at the time. And so it just like dragged me back into the Barry. So then I started like, there used to be a website called Glimmer Graphics. I think it just came down recently, but they had like a pretty extensive like checklist of all of the Barry Windsor Smith stuff. So I basically like had copied that down and like went through and was hunting down more or less everything. And then once I got through the comics, I started going back to like the like posters and prints and stuff he was doing in like the late 70s, early 80s.
Is he a 2000 AD guy? Is that where he got to start?
No, he Marvel, Conan.
That was his first?
Yeah, I think he was doing some like there's like some in Europe they do these like reprints of you know, Marvel and DC stuff that'll basically be like a few issues or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think he was drawing some pinups in there. And then came to the Marvel offices. They liked the pinups. Came to the Marvel offices and basically just like got a job. Did like an random X-Men issue, random Doctor Strange issue, Chamber of Darkness, a couple like just like real random things, and then got the Conan gig, and then was on. I guess that's how I got like famous or whatever.
What a singular force! You look at his stuff; it's like there's nothing like it, and even you look through the past stuff and even up to Monsters now, and it's like the guy has only refined his ability. You don't see like, oh, this is Barry Windsor Smith's not great era. That doesn't exist.
I mean, there's some, I don't know. There's some stuff in the like early 2000s. I'm maybe not into, because he does this sort of like chunkier style now.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of like, he did like a string of covers, like a Thor cover and some like X-Men or Wolverine or Deadpool stuff. That's like kind of
lazy,
just not my style. And then also coupled with like computer coloring, which I hate.
I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, comparing it to like other artists, yeah, it's like incredible. Like comparing it to like him, it's like less of what I mean. Definitely like for me, like the late 80s, early 90s stuff, Weapon X, the Life Death stuff, the X-Men fill-in issues, the Dasher in Africa. I think that he calls it like his long thin period where everybody was like real skinny and tall. Kind of had the like Fist of the North Star look, like Fist of the North Star, but through like an Art Nouveau, pre-Raphaelite lens. Like that's my favorite stuff.
Yeah.
But there's no denying that, like, if you look at Monsters, like his craft wise, he's like at the top of his game. It's insane.
You know, for me, I talk about this a lot, that for some people, it's the record store that informs their tastes and kind of their lifestyle, and it's where people find their people, so to speak. But for me, it was definitely the direct market comic book shop. So how does that relate to you in terms of having you own a record store, right?
Yeah.
So would you agree with that? Was the record store more of something that informed you, or was it the comic shop next to Blockbuster, or was it some kind of a hybrid of both?
It's all those things. And it's like, for me, I think I was kind of, I mean, not so much with the record shop, but definitely with the comic shops and stuff like that. I was lucky because the ones we have here, like, I might have gone in looking for X-Men or whatever, but I sometimes came out with other interesting stuff. Like, there's a long running comic shop here called Crescent City Comics. And when I used to go to the old location, this was like probably the late 90s, early 2000s. I was still kind of a mark for like a lot of that superhero stuff. And I was still looking for that, like looking for what was good, because at some point I started hating all the none of those guys were drawing their own books.
Right.
And I'd follow them the image because I like the art. And then they stopped drawing the books, and it's like, and they got these young yahoos that, like, I didn't like their art style drawing. No. So it was like, whatever. Like, I didn't care about that.
I'm the same. I that's when I jumped image too. That I kind of took a break from comics overall. After that.
I mean, I've gone in spurts with it, but every now and then there'll just be something that sort of like pulls me back into it. And Crescent City Comics, I was real lucky because, like, I mean, that's where I came across Domu, Katsuhiro Tomo's Domu, and Nausicaa, the first couple, like, it's like the Studio Ghibli, I can't remember the guy's name, but like the person that did like Mononoke, Princess Mononoke, and all stuff like that kind of thing. And all kinds of stuff, and definitely like in the mid to late 90s, where at some point there were a lot of comic book shops here, and then when the market crashed, they were going quick, and a lot of them would have long 30 or 40 long boxes that were like 20 or 30 comics for $1.
Yeah.
So like, you'd go and I would just rack up comics, and at that point, I was still grabbing a lot of stuff, filling in stuff that I liked, but I was also picking up random stuff that I didn't know that I just thought looked cool. V for Vendetta, like, I got that in a 10 for $1 box.
Incredible.
I had the whole run at one point for nothing.
Incredible.
And I just grabbed it because they're like, oh, this sounds cool, it looks cool, and I just grabbed it. And
The cover was very
randomly read
striking.
it one day and I was like, oh, this is the Watchmen guy and blah, blah,
Yes.
blah. And like, so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I was just kind of lucky that the comic shops, at least the main ones I was going to, Crescent City Comics, More Fun Comics, Family Books and Comics before it closed. They had other stuff. They had stuff that, it was cool stuff too, mixed in with all the fluff. And, Crescent City Comics is still like that. They still carry a ton of like incredible stuff. So like they're, it's always, and it's funny because now I kind of look at it from like I see the business perspective. I mean, I don't adhere to this with my shop at all, but like,
you stock comics in your shop?
What's that?
You stock comics in your shop?
I do have some comics, but in terms of like comics or records or whatever, like I don't stock stuff because it's going to sell or because I think it'll sell or what, like, I don't care. Like I just stock stuff I think is cool. So like that's the thing. So like if I'm gonna get a record and it's gonna sit there for 10 years and I got to sit in there with it and look at it for 10 years, you know what I mean? It's got to be something that I don't mind looking at, and I like that it's not gonna annoy me that this record is still here or comic or book or whatever. Like it's got to be cool. Whereas some of these other shops that admittedly are way more financially successful and stable than I am, they're stocking all kinds of, BS stuff and tchotchkes and, keychains and stickers and, all kinds of stupid stuff that I can't even stand to be around it, let alone have it, it would be in the cheapo bin if I had it,
you would be walking to some of the shops that do the hybrids kind of sales method, like the hybrid curation, if you want to even call it that. And sometimes it is a turnoff. I know what you're talking about because it does seem like the person stocking it is just stocking it because they know that people like whatever Marvel Comics is putting out now. And I'm not bashing Marvel. I still read Marvel, but you can tell when somebody is just stocking stuff that they know that will sell because they have to make their bottom line, whatever. So it's cool to actually find a shop that may have it may be more challenging for them to stay open, but there is a level of curation and heart that's put into what they're putting out. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, down here, Crescent City's like a good balance of the two, but I'm just not, like, personally, I'm not a very balanced, I don't like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to go in and it'd be cool stuff. And
you want to discover stuff. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. But what was cool about the direct market for me in some of these comic shops and very pivotal is that, like, even though like when I was as a kid, like going in, I just wanted to read Spider-Man or I just wanted to read Punisher, like I was still exposed to like a Dark Knight Returns poster on the wall, a concrete T-shirt hanging, a Cerebus book that they put up front. Even though I was like, I'm not really into that yet, because a lot of that stuff went over my head. Like Watchmen went over my head when I was at the direct markets. Like at the time those were first released, just went over my head. But I knew about it, so that by the time I was at the stage in my life where I was looking for something more out of comic books, I was able to recall like, oh yeah, all those titles I would see. Let me check those out now. So in that sense, like it harkens back to my point earlier, how comic books expand with you expand with comics if you let it, if you really are willing to go on that journey.
Yeah, I mean, when I got back into comics a few years back, I was just sort of like randomly grabbing. I would go to Crescent City and I would randomly grab stuff that I just thought looked cool, and it looked interesting, like seemed like I had interest in. And I was just buying stuff the way I used to get records, where I used to just get records that I thought sounded cool, or grab a record that looked cool. And then I fell off again for a little bit, sort of. And then Barry Windsor Smith pulled me back, and, and doing the research and like hunting down the Barry Windsor Smith interviews and stuff, that got me to the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel. I don't know if you watch that.
It's great.
Right. And so, and then those guys basically drew me back into the hunt for stuff even further back that I had missed. And and that's kind of where I've been for like the last like 2 or 3 years. So I'm just on a like more or less like 70s 80s kick of like Euro stuff and some manga stuff that I just missed. I don't know, for whatever reason I just didn't, or even at the time like I didn't really like it, you know, like I'm sure I've seen like Richard Corbin stuff before in my life, and like totally unappealing. But now, you know, that I'm 42, whatever, my sensibilities have changed a little bit. Like now I'm like, I don't know, I'm not obsessed with them, but I've been buying stacks of Richard Corbin stuff. So
it clicks.
You know.
I know what you mean. It clicks. You sometimes, and this is, I think, with all art, some art you have to come to it. Like just because it's out at the time doesn't mean you're gonna gravitate towards it. You have to meet it at a certain stage in your life, or you have to make yourself say, I'm gonna check this out because I know there's something there, and I'm gonna figure out how to like something like that.
I mean, it's like that with me with music too. Like, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, sometimes, you know, like at one point I was listening to like a lot of like pop country stuff, like straight up like radio, current, like this year country type stuff, you know, and part of that was it was just like a great palate cleanser from all the other stuff,
I'm sure,
that I've been listening to, and I think with like visual arts, it's a lot like that too. Like I'll get real deep into something for a while, and I just need something totally different to like give me a new perspective on, you know, the stuff I'm looking at.
Was that a inclination of yours from early on, or is that something that's developed as your own artistic palette has developed?
I mean, I think there's always been inklings of that throughout my life. Because I just go through these, you know, I go through these spurts where I'm like real obsessive over a very particular, I like this thing. And that's all I want is I want this thing, and I want to consume this thing. And especially with music, I'll get like that where there's, you know, some band of a certain genre or whatever, I'll love it. And then I'll track down like 100 bands of that genre, you know, and then at some point it's sort of like, I have to whittle it down. Okay, I don't really like all of this stuff. And actually, I only like the first 5 really good ones that I came to. Like, that's what I like, you know, that's the core of what I like. And so everything else is just sort of fluff or whatever.
Yeah. So where do you think, what do you think about like the newer comics? Are you reading any? Are you reading anything that's current?
Current. Silver Coin I'm reading. Which is, it's fine. I mainly like it because it's like I hadn't read like a monthly in years and years. And I just had an urge, you know, like, you know, it's the same thing with like the Netflix mentality of like, you want the season, you want to just be able to go through the whole season of a thing or whatever. Like I gotten like that with comics, like where I didn't want to just read a chapter and have to wait a month for the next chapter and like space it out over a year or whatever. Like I want to just read the thing, you know? But I don't know. I had an urge to like get back into like the month, you know, just having a book I could go get, you know, or a few, but Silver Coin, Red Room are like probably the only 2 that I've been reading that are current and like month, you know, I'm just reading them as they come out. I haven't done floppies in so long.
No.
Now I'm kind of getting back into it, but really only if it's like the coloring or something is better on the singles. And I don't bag and board anything. Everything's just in a box, you know. I have stuff just to read. I hate like collector culture. I hate it.
You're not into it.
No, I hate it. Like I'm very, especially from the record shop, I fucking hate it. What color vinyl is this? I hate it.
I want to get into this. Because I'm not sensitive about it. I get it. I
mean, I'm just very utilitarian when it comes to a bit, sort of, when it comes to like art and stuff in general. So like, you know, between losing stuff and moving and Katrina and blah, 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 like I've sort of like weaned down my stuff. I mean, I still have a lot of stuff, but I've weaned it down to like the stuff that I keep coming back to. So like comic, like if I read some comic and I'm like, I'm never gonna read this again. Like it's gone. It's at the shop, or I'm get rid of it. I don't want to keep a ton of stuff. I don't want the house to be piled up with stuff. I want the house to have this stuff in it that like I need to read this 10 more times this month. I need to listen to this record 100 more times today. Like if I haven't listened to something in a year, like it's got to go. Like I used to be more of a completist about stuff, about everything. And now I'm less like that. Now I'm like, okay, I want to chop this down to like just what I need, whether it be like, like say with records, like I don't need every Pearl Jam record. I need the 5 Pearl Jam records that I actually listen to. I don't need 30 Smiths bootlegs.
Right.
I can just do the one Smiths bootleg I'm going to listen to.
Right.
So, that's why I say it's sort of like utilitarian, because it's like I'm less like I don't want to have stuff just because it's like nostalgic. I'm gonna say that, and I got a fucking box of Star Wars toys up in the attic. So like,
right.
And I don't know, maybe part of it is like Western consumerism, and there's like a bit of like ownership or something. There's like some weird ownership thing involved in it. There's weird feelings you have where you're compelled to like, want to dominate this thing and consume it in some way. And but I don't know. It's like what's the point? I don't see a point in that anymore for me. Like, and I don't like. Definitely for me, like like I was very lucky with Hurricane Katrina in terms of like not losing people or stuff or anything. Like I didn't have any great hardships, but I did sort of like leave town and left town with nothing, basically next to nothing, a bag of clothes, and didn't have a lot of stuff, and I loved it. I loved not having the stuff and the clutter, and just sort of, it felt like it freed up a lot of like mental space. And I really like kept that lifestyle up until we bought our house, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna be here for a minute. Like I can put some stuff in it. Like it's fine. But even now, and then especially like digging through stuff, during lockdown, COVID lockdown and all, it was like, I got so much crap that I like never look at, don't care about, like there's no attachment to it. Like just get rid of it, We'll keep all the stuff that like is useful. And like, with records, it's definitely, I have the records that I listen to and the records that Emily listens to. And then there's a handful of stuff that's like, there's probably some stuff that could still stand to go. And then there's a handful of records where it's like inspiration records, something I might, if I need to be inspired aesthetically or trying to figure out a layout or something, I might have a few things I pull off the shelf just to like look at and get the juices going.
For me, when I see somebody's collection, I like to see a variety, not in the sense of different stuff. I just mean like, I want, a great thing when I meet collectors and I see people's collection is you get a sense of their taste. When you're a completionist, you get a sense of consuming, and you get a sense of and that's fine too. I'm totally cool with that too. Some people just want to have every single Ninja Turtle figure available. That's cool. But to me, that it's more interesting when you get into the conversation of somebody like, oh, I only like these guys, and so I wanted to get a whole Casey Jones display going of everything Casey Jones or whatever. But when you see somebody who is able to discipline themselves in what they like, I find that more interesting to me. So I totally get what you're saying.
I mean, I the collector stuff, I can't stand it. I hate it. Collector stuff reminds me of people in the punk scene or whatever who were just like spectators, who were just there to like, it was a transaction. I'm gonna pay $5 and I'm gonna come watch a show or whatever, and that's it. That's the end of it. Like, and I don't like that. Like, like punk or DIY or whatever art, it's like an interactive sport. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like you can't just, I don't want spectators. I want people that are like getting the stuff because it's fueling them to put something back in, because what they put back in is going to fuel me to put something back. You know what I mean? It's like that's what I've always been sort of striving for with like music or art or whatever, is like that sort of like creative echo chamber. And the people that just care about color, vinyl, or having 10 copies of the same record because it's on different colors, yes. Like, I'm sorry, but like I cannot identify with that at all. And it just seems to me like the worst aspects of American culture. Like, I hate it.
And it's lame. Funny. Do you
I mean, look, if I went somewhere like a action figure museum and it was filled with figures and whatever, like that would be an interesting thing to see and whatever. And I would like there to be those places, but like somebody's personal collection of Star Wars toys or whatever, like who cares? Like, I'm never going to see that, or like, it doesn't have any use for me. It's just like collecting dust in somebody's house while it's weird. And it fuels this weird, like hoarder thing. I just don't like it. I hate it.
Do you have those tendencies? Do you have hoarder tendencies?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, but definitely from that sort of like, I have to fight that sort of completist, archivist urge for sure, which I've gotten way better about. And then also just like holding on to things because they might be useful one day. Like I'm slowly purging myself of those, bullshit, a bag of screws or what, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm like that.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
And I don't know. As I've gotten older, I don't like a lot of like stuff and clutter, as much as possible. I mean, our house is a little cluttered right now, but as I look around, but stuff like this got to go, got to make room for like the good. And that's the thing, like during COVID, I basically, I've had a lot of art books over the years, and I had a huge shelves full of like art books because I booked punk shows for 20 years. So I would use that stuff to make flyers, or I'd use that stuff on record layouts or whatever. So like, you accumulate that stuff and Xerox, just folders full of stuff I just Xeroxed out of a zine, that's just like my morgue file for like, using for flyers and stuff. But during COVID, I decided, okay, I'm going to clean out this closet of all this shit. Like, we need to take back the space. Yeah. And I'm going to basically take up, we got like 3 big record shelves in the front room, and I'm going to take up this much space. So when I decide I'm going to take up this much space, not just for the records and books and all the stuff has to fit in the space. So then it was like, okay, what needs to go to make a little space to put some stuff in here? And if the space gets filled up, it's like, okay, well, one in, one out, like we can't, there's not going to be.
Sounds very liberating.
Yeah. I mean, the point of it should be to like, have the best, most useful collection to you personally, not the biggest, I don't know. What's the point of having a big collection? I mean, I don't know. I say that now. I'm like, sometimes it's kind of cool to see.
It is like, cool. I know what you mean.
Expansive, just like, but it's cool. It's cool to see. It's cool. Oh, this is neat. And then it's like, well, but if I had to live with it, like, it wouldn't be quite as.
The idea of having the mentality of, oh, I need to have this, even though I don't like this, but it will complete my set, gives me anxiety, and it sounds like a burden. Yeah. But for some people, it works. That's what they're going for, is to have this sense of the whole thing. I get it. And that's partially why I started this podcast, is to kind of live vicariously through that, in a sense, because and also to understand it, because, and both of us are totally coming at this with respect, and I can hear it in your voice. And though
I don't know why you're hearing that, there's no, I don't like
I'm being charitable.
Yeah, you're being generous.
But
trying to make me look good.
Do you think that is from being a fan of the Image era, where it was like, oh, I'm going to buy 10 of these?
I mean, it's a lot of things. It's like, my parents aren't hoarders, but, my mom was real good. When they'd get us toys, like my mom kept like checklists and shit.
Oh,
so like, I remember, like little notebooks, like checklists. Like I remember like when she was getting me like the Superpowers guys in the 80s, she had a little checklist of which ones I had. So
nice.
But I think from her perspective, it was more about like, oh, so I don't buy him something he's already got.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
she'd
But
bring
from
you
my
home stuff. She wouldn't take you to the store. She'd bring you home. She'd bring you home toys.
No, she'd take me to the store, but but it's like she's not, she doesn't care about this. She's not looking, you know what I mean? So, but from my perspective, I think in my brain it was like, oh, the checklist of what we need to get to finish this. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think maybe that got in my brain early on, and yes, definitely coming into comics during the speculator boom and having missed, like the cartoons kayfabe dudes talk about this all the time, like having missed all this like old stuff, and then having your set of number ones and your set of like comics that you could get that would be worth $10,000 one day. Like, yeah, that was exciting. Sure. I mean, looking back on that, like whatever, what a waste of time and money. I mean, there's so much shit I wasted where I could have been getting cool stuff.
That's right.
For nothing.
Right.
I was busy buying 5 copies of Wildcats #1. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point?
Yeah. By the way,
that I don't even have anymore.
Sandman won the Eisner in '91, just to put a time and place of what was going on in comics. Like, so.
I mean, I read Sandman. I read Sandman in the late '90s.
Yeah.
It was done. I got, they had that, what was it, like Columbia House or whatever, that did like the CDs or whatever, where you get like spend $1 and you get like, they did a book. There was a book version of that at one point that I bought into, and I got, actually the first Sandman graphic novel I read was the last one, Kindly Ones, on accident, because I just didn't realize it was the last one.
Yeah.
But I loved it. Even reading it, not knowing the whole thing, I loved it. And my buddy had all the other ones. And so I borrowed all the other ones from him. And it had to be the 90s, because we picked those up at there's some thrift store out in Bay St. Louis we went to that they had all I regret not buying more stuff. They had all kinds of stuff, 90% off the cover price. Amazing. So he got all this, probably the full run of Sandman graphic novels for like $20 or whatever. And yeah, it's insane. So,
you still have him? Is your buddy still around? Are you still friends?
He's still around. We are still sort of friends. I don't know if he still got him or not.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's kept of his stuff. He was of, all my friends. He accumulated a lot of things, but he was not very precious with his, his things would just be like littered all over the CDs, all over the floor, and all kinds of. I
know those types of people.
I mean, he was definitely getting stuff because he wanted to get the thing and like ingest the thing and get the ideas out of the thing, which is like, I'm not crazy about keeping my stuff perfect, but I don't have like records all over the floor or whatever.
Right.
Like he did.
When you go on tour, do you hit the comic shops?
Now I do. I wasn't for a while. Now I do because I'm hunting down. There's certain stuff I'm on the hunt for, and I'm looking for stuff for the record shop. You talk about, you said something earlier about living vicariously. I mean, that's what I always say about the record shop is like, I've got the shop so I can make the shop a cool public facing collection of things that people can go through. And I talk every now and some of my people, my regulars come in, we talk about stuff at home, and I'm always talking about like, well, I probably still have like a few hundred like punk and hardcore records of stuff that like I loved when I was a teenager, but I've got these records like I rarely listen to some of this stuff, and I could probably like chew off another like 100 records and bring to the shops. Like I've got all this stuff that's like, I've kept it because it's stuff that like is like my identity, basically. But, like Emily, she doesn't give a shit. She's not looking at my, like the records and like, oh, he's real cool for having this record. Oh, he's got this botch record. That's so cool. Like she doesn't give a shit. She loves if I got rid of all that, all the stuff that neither of us are really listening to. Like, and I would probably look cooler if I had it in the shop, like the shop at least would look cool.
But
Um,
there's the tendency of you where people, the mindset that people can easily fall into, where you're curating a collection for like a phantom that's going to come to your place and give you a bunch of compliments.
yeah, and we don't have people coming out. We got a bad dog
No
that's
one
going to
coming
bite people.
over.
So like nobody's coming over here looking at these records. Like it is not impressing anyone.
Right,
You know,
right.
it's just taking up space sometimes. I mean, I don't know. I've got to wean down on stuff I really like, but sometimes it's even then it still feels like it's just taking up space.
Who has the coolest shops? Like what states or countries have you been most impressed with?
For comics,
Or records or both? But let's start with comics.
um, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of the last time I've been to like a comic book shop that I thought was really incredible. We went, God, I wish I could remember the name of the place. We went to a spot in Baltimore that was like a bookshop, and they had a lot of comics too. That was awesome. In terms of like the stuff they had, God, I have to look up the name.
They're harder to come by now, like the cool shops that, because a lot of them have to sell, you know, the big two just to stay afloat. So like they can't really stock a deep back issue section. They can't really stock the more esoteric stuff. So it's harder and harder to find.
Yeah, right. I mean, in terms
shop.
of finding a shop where I'm going to buy some, but it's, part of it is like when I go to comic book shops or record shops or whatever, like I'm less looking for me a lot of, well, the comic shops, I'm still looking for me, but like definitely the record shops, I'm less looking for me and more looking at where I can get stuff that they don't care about anymore, that I can get for nothing or whatever, get at a reasonable price and put it in my shop to make my shop look cool. Look the way I want it to look the way I think it'll look cool. And
how does that translate to comics? Like,
that's it works for comics too, because the stuff I'm interested in comic wise, especially older stuff, is like probably stuff that isn't selling for a lot of, I don't get the impression that a lot of like current comic book readers are trying to hunt down old copies of Heavy Metal or Epic Illustrated or whatever I'm looking for, Alex Sinner, Drew Lay stuff or whatever. Like they're not looking for that shit,
No.
So great for me because I want to get it. I want to get it and have it in my shop because I want the stuff. Like I want my shop to just be just stuff I think is cool. So like you pull something out and it's incredible. It's not everything is for everybody, but at least in terms of like what I think of as quality, like it's all a certain standard.
And you could set a kid or anybody of any age on a great path with that one thing that you found and brought into your own place. That's like the goal, right?
I mean, hopefully, yeah. I mean, I treat the record shop the same way I did like doing punk shows. It's supposed to be accessible to a certain degree, but also not the easiest thing to penetrate, so that it takes a little bit of effort on the part of the person to like do the thing and get something out of it. But when you get something out of it, you actually get something out of it, and hopefully it could lead you into doing, and the thing too is like, I have certain music and books and comics and stuff in there because that's the stuff I enjoy, and I want people to also enjoy that, and then to put stuff out there that's coming from that, so it's ideally something that I would enjoy, give me more fuel to like do things.
How do your other band members read comics? Have you gotten them into stuff?
The bass player does, Mitch does, Tyler, our drummer, reads some, Casey reads some. Mitch is like the other comic book person, but he's like he's not into he thinks I only read like fantasy dragons and stuff, which is not true at all. I mean, I do read some of that stuff, but like that's not, I don't know where he gets that from. And my perspective is he really just reads like Marvel and DC, and then like some Image, some stuff like that. Like he's trying to think of what he's into, like Nail Biter. I think he's into that one.
Is that an Image or something?
Sweet Tooth.
Yeah, that stuff misses me. A lot of that stuff misses me.
No,
I think you and I our tastes somewhat align. closely in the sense of esoteric storytelling and kind of hard to like a hard barrier of entry stuff that requires more patience and effort from the reader. That where you kind of can kind of you have to go mining for it. Now I love a lot. There's a lot of Marvel stuff that a lot of it has ended. The runs and the writers have jumped off by now, but I got back into spandex and capes myself, and I can relate to what you're saying earlier about how you go in waves with comics where you're in and out. I've done that a few times in my life.
The superhero stuff, I just can't. There's rarely anything. I mean, I did just read Batman Year 100.
That was nice. I like Paul Pope.
Yeah, it was fine, but again, it's like one of those comics where like, and I mean, I still have it sitting in the closet, but is it going to stay in? I mean, it's probably going to make its way to the shop. You know, if I had to guess, like it's not going to be one that I come back to.
I wish they made more of that. I wish that continued on. It was cool for when it came out, the storytelling involved, because it kind of fomented a lot of the surveillance and a lot of like what's going on with technology and big kind of corporate technology. So in that sense, looking back on it, it was pretty forward thinking, and it's Paul Pope, and I love his stuff, but I wish like it continued on. Like I wish Batman 100 was still a title.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, what got me about it in terms of the format was that it was less exposition based, you know, and that's what I like about comics is like show, don't tell. Like I don't need Chris Claremont to write a novella in a single issue of a comic, because he's got the artist that can show me the things that he's writing. Like
nothing is more killer. Nothing is more killer than like a silent issue. Like when you can get an issue and there's no dialogue at all and you can see the story, that's amazing to me.
Right. And I think that's why I've gone back into like all this European stuff, because I feel like a lot of like 70s, early 80s European stuff was like much more that, like less the Drouet stuff, especially, you know, some of the Mobius stuff. Well, Mobius isn't like my favorite, but yeah, getting back to something you said earlier too, though, about current stuff I'm reading. Ron Wimberly, you know him? He did
maybe
Prince of Cats was one he did.
No.
Yeah, it's like
who's his name? Ron who?
Ronald Wimberly. It's like Prince of Cats is like it's a Romeo and it's like a sort of like a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but from the perspective of the side of like the not main characters.
Very cool.
Set in a sort of like 80s modern hip hop urban setting, but mixed with ninjas and samurai.
That's cool.
It's awesome.
I'm looking at his stuff right now. Great.
He's got a story in a Metal Hurlant, like a current Metal Hurlant collection. And I happened to be flipping through it, and I came across this one story, and his stuff, he just did the art for it. And his stuff is very like, looks like Aeon Flux, basically.
Yeah.
I love Aeon Flux. You know,
yeah.
I'm of that age.
Yeah.
And so I kept seeing that Prince of Cats book, and I eventually just grabbed it, and I was like, oh, it's incredible. And he's got another, and I don't do a lot of, I rarely do any kind of like Kickstarter or whatever, but he just had a Kickstarter for a ninja comic he's doing.
Cool.
And I backed that. So I think that thing's coming out, but he's awesome. There's another lady. Let me grab the book actually.
Yeah, please.
And this was another like Kickstarter thing I just backed because she's got a new book. I'm not going to pronounce this right. She's like Swedish or Norwegian or something. Linnea Sturt.
Let's see that cover.
Sterte. Stages of Rot is the one. A buddy just gave me this.
I've never seen
this. It's very it's like very kind of like modern, like not quite young adult, but like reminds me of like the Tilly Walden stuff, which I love Tilly Walden actually. But like that, but kind of like more Mobius, more on like the Mobius end of things. But she's got a new one coming out and a reprint. Peow, Peow, P-E-O-W is the publisher.
Uh-huh.
and they're actually kind of a sick publisher. Like most of the stuff's like a little too young adult
Mm-hmm.
or something for me,
Mm-hmm.
but this, and there's another lady on there that does some real cool stuff. Yeah, I like them. I'm trying to think of what else, like current stuff. It's Becky Cloonan, but I love all the old Becky Cloonan stuff. I wish she didn't need money and could just do cool
It's hard.
could do cool personal projects. Yeah, I don't know.
So wait, so I don't think we got to it. Where have you been? Like, have you been in other countries and been to some of the comic shops there yet?
Oh, yeah, we just went to Europe, and I mean, dude, that's all I was doing. We get to a show, we basically get to the show, have to load in, might have to sound check, and then I would just disappear. I would just any comic book or record shop within like a 30 to 40-minute walk that I could get to before they closed. I was racing to get to shops. Like the non-English speaking countries, a little harder to find cool stuff because like a lot, I buy comics because I want to read them too. So like,
Sure.
if I was getting stuff that wasn't in English, it was like because it's something that might never get translated that I just want to have just so I knew what it was, or it was collections of stuff, or it was an art book or whatever. But yeah, I found a bunch of, I couldn't tell you the names of any of the comic shops I went because it was like a whirlwind of stuff. But I mailed back like 4 boxes full of records and comics, mostly for the shop, some stuff for me.
I was kind of veering towards that. You have to send stuff home when you're on tour. Like, you don't schlep that stuff with you, right?
If we're over here, we could pack it in the van. If we're I could bring back a bag or a suitcase full of stuff if we were overseas, but we were just lucky because the people that do our t-shirts out of Berlin, they were willing to just mail stuff back for me, so I could just, they were going to mail back like the merch and all the extra merch and all stuff anyway. So I just figured, I'll just send them my boxes and stuff too, and they can just mail it back with everything else. Speaking
of your merch, I came across a shirt of yours. And it was it seemed like it was a old fantasy image of a skeleton that was on a throne, and it had like a crown on it.
I think it's from Conan.
Is that a Conan image?
Yeah, I think when I was in I lived in Oakland for like a year after Katrina, and at one point I downloaded, I don't know where I got them from, SoulSeek or something. I downloaded like a folder full of like old Conan scans, and that was just one I had for like a million years. I don't know who it is. That was probably Buscema, if I had to guess. Part of his run, or one of those guys. Do you do that anymore? Do you use comic book stuff or references for your merch or your design? Maybe on like a shirt. I wouldn't do it on a record anymore. I mean, we know enough people that we like that do art that I would just probably get somebody like for a record or whatever. I'm less likely to just sort of like pilfer stuff, but I have in the past. I mean, there's some Barry Windsor Smith stuff on some old records, and cool. Definitely on shirt. I mean, we did a weekend in Florida one time where I did all Jeff Smith Bone stuff for the shirts and the posters. And I'm from Florida. You're from where out in Florida? I was born and raised in Miami Beach. Oh yeah, nice. So there's a lot of good comic shops there. They're kind of few and far between now, but there are some that are still dank. You'll walk in and like they have the real like yellow long boxes. I love. I mean, we went right before COVID. We went to Pensacola, and I was dragging Emily around all these comic shops and stuff. And we went in one shop. It was like comics and junk and whatever. And it was like you couldn't walk. You had to like. Yeah. Like dig out box. Things are just stacked on top of each other. I love that. That's my favorite. I mean, one of the comic book shops here, More Fun, is kind of like that. The guy that owns it now had bought it off another guy had been running for like 50 years, 100 years or something. So like, there's stuff in there like hasn't been priced since it like went on the show. So if you dig, and he doesn't care, he just it's sitting in a box. So he's not trying to like he's not gouging people for stuff. I bought all kinds of I went through all his art books and bought all his like Frank Frazetta books that are out of print. Those are cool. all kinds of stuff.
Finding those early like pre-graphic novel stuff where it was like they were, because you remember this, graphic novels were not a thing. Like they did not make them up until maybe they started like around like Dark Phoenix, where they would collect them. But prior to that, like you couldn't find graphic novels at comic book shops. They were very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I remember getting the Days of Future Past Prestige format thing that came out that was just like the 2 issues and a thing, and that was like, wow, I didn't even know. I thought it was just some crazy issue or something. I didn't realize it was like, oh, this is from whatever.
But those old like fantasy illustration books that they used to put out, if finding those, that's fantastic. That and like if you can find some old heavy metal mags, if you can find some of like the old French stuff, even like Asterix stuff, like I still like, if I can find that stuff, like I'm stoked.
Yeah, I got a buddy that's into that. There's that the bookshop over here actually has a bunch of that stuff. That's not really my thing, but yeah.
Are there any other artists besides Barry Windsor Smith and Corbin, or anything that like you get really jazzed by when you see and kind of really kind of fortify you?
I'm on a Drew Lake kick right now. I love the Drew Lake. I mean, I had a couple of Sloan books. You know, they just look like it looks like what the Games Workshop, the Warhammer people like looked at that and were like, all right, now we're going to start a company based on this. It looks kind of like that, but even weirder. Yeah, I've been on this like not deep, but like I've been starting to accumulate more of the, and I'm trying to get less of like the, Barry Windsor Smith too. Like, I hadn't thought of it, and this is like a recent thing that I had never thought of, but that the coloring and the reprints and all this stuff, that it makes a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
Like I'd seen some of this Conan stuff and it had been recolored, like that Dark Horse stuff that had been like digitally recolored. It looks like garbage. I can't even look at it. It looks so bad. And then once I just saw it in black and white or the original colors or whatever, it's like, oh, this is why people love it, because it's incredible. It's incredible in these colors. So like with some of the Drew Lake stuff, like they have all these like big reprints, but they're on like glossy paper and it's kind of whatever. But I've been kind of trying to find like the reprint, the older prints of those things that are a little more to my taste.
What's been your experience in trying to track those down? Are they hard to get?
Oh, terrible. I mean, there's nobody around here that has that stuff, and it's like eBay, basically, like digging through, having to dig through eBay and stuff.
Yeah,
but
the coloring thing, I get. I'm a little agnostic to that, but I understand it, and I recently read. I had never actually dove in and read the Alan Moore Swamp Thing run like in its entirety, so I'm digging into that. And I bought the new Absolute ones that they have that are recolored, and I saw online like people like really despise it. So I understand completely the mentality.
I mean, it just depends on how garish it is, and like I don't like the sort of like the digital like shading. Like I don't like all those effects. I just don't. That effect just doesn't gel with me. I mean, there's plenty of comics I have, like newer comics that are even drawn digitally and colored digitally that I love, but I don't know, something about, especially like the old stuff, it just doesn't look as good when it has that treatment. And like I came to Cartoons Kayfabe. It's funny because before I came to Cartoons Kayfabe, I read an article that Tom Scioli wrote specifically about Conan and the coloring stuff, and that's what like got me thinking about it. I was like, oh, it looks different, you know what I mean? So like, it's kind of ironic that I found that article with him, because he's one of the Cartoons Kayfabe dudes, and found that article with him when I was doing all the Barry Windsor Smith stuff, and then I actually got into Cartoons Kayfabe because I was looking for Barry Windsor Smith interviews, and I think that's how I got to like their Wizard flips or whatever, because they were going through an issue of Wizard that had Barry, and then I sort of like did a deep dive into like the Wizard stuff, and then I mean, that's the thing about Cartoons Kayfabe, though, is like even them flipping through some fucking bullshit Wizard thing that's like so much garbage, their commentary on it will open up all kinds of stuff that isn't garbage.
Sure.
That was actually going on at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's one of the things I'm sort of filled with a bit of regret about, is that I wasn't more open to like the cooler stuff that was happening in that
I have the
period
same
where I was
feeling.
like obsessed with comics.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like you kind of almost feel like you had it wrong, but you know, like that's kind of how it goes. Like you have to come to it eventually. Like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I know, but it's also, you know, it's the same way with like music and stuff. It's like, if I just gotten into this back then, where would I be now? I'd be like
Right.
years ahead now in what I was listening to. And
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think you think the coloring thing is like the lack of the hand feel?
uh, yeah, just that it's bad. The sensibility is just not good. It's just a different aesthetic value,
Yeah.
and one that I don't like. You know, one that it just looks bad to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the same way like a drawing in a certain style or a song in a certain way. Like somebody might like it, but not me. You know, so like I mean, I don't want to speak about it objectively. I just find it aesthetically offensive.
Yeah.
Dude, we were just talking about eBay. I just got outbid on 2 Al Columbia books I was trying to get.
What'd they go for?
Well, they're not over yet, but I have a feeling they're going to go for way too much for my means.
I know the
Two more current people I should mention. Chris Gooch does a bunch of indie stuff. He's out of Australia, New Zealand, I think. But I've got his books over here. I can't remember what publisher it is, but Chris Gooch, awesome kind of indie, not slice of life, but kind of dark, weird, good. And then INJ Colbert.
You got me doing homework. I like it.
Yeah, Colbert does a book, or maybe did a book called The Brink that's real good, kind of Lovecraftian space thing. He's like I think he's a 2000 AD.
Okay, cool.
Like current 2000 AD person. I think The Brink maybe came out in that. I came to him because he did some Lovecraft adaptations years ago, when I was kind of first starting to get another ramp back up into comics. I was buying all those.
Do you read fiction? Like, do you read novels? Do you read fantasy novels? Do you read stuff like that?
Yeah, I've been bad.
Sci-fi?
The last few years I've been bad about it because I've just been reading comic books. But I just read a Clive Barker.
How was it?
I was fine. It's something I read when I was a kid. It was like the movie Nightbreed?
Of course.
Yeah, so I read the story that's based on, which I had read when I was a teenager. I randomly was looking at some Nightbreed stuff one night, and then like 2 days later, when I was thrifting for stuff for the shop, I came across the book that has that story and a bunch of other like short stories. So I grabbed it, and before I threw it in the shop, I was like, I'm gonna read this, and just read it. So it's whatever.
Quick read.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I've ever really sat down. I might have read some short stories a long time ago from Clive Barker, but I've never really had a Clive Barker kick. Like that bug has never really bit me.
He's whatever. I mean, honestly, the only Clive Barker stuff I really like is like Nightbreed. Love Nightbreed. One of my favorite movies from the 90s. Love it. They keep talking about doing like a remake, like doing a TV show remake of it, which I would, if they did it right, would be, I'd love that. But
he does comics now too, right?
I think he has. And like the Hellraiser stuff, like the Clive Barker's like, he's one of those guys that like, there's some good ideas and stuff, and then it just kind of goes like, there's not a lot of substance to it, but there's some cool ideas.
Yeah.
Like in that book, one of the short stories is The Master of Illusions, like that movie or whatever, the Quantum Leap guy, what's his name?
Dean Scott. Wait, not Dean Stockton or the other guy?
It's like Bacata, or I can't remember his last name.
Oh, Scott Bakula.
Bakula, yeah, right. So like the short story, not great. The movie also pretty bad, but like the opening sequence of the movie is great, and like the idea of this like kind of cult in the desert was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then the very end, some of the voiceover stuff. It's like, it's funny because he's like the stuff will be very visually compelling with like the opening sequence, or like the credits thing is kind of cool, and then the rest of it's kind of whatever.
Yeah, with Clive Barker for me, the ideas are there, but also I feel like everybody who's ever adapted him, Hellraiser aside, the first one or so, just kind of gets it wrong. Like it's
Yeah.
very susceptible to
Well,
cheesy
he did the
visuals.
first he did the first one.
He directed that?
Yeah, he had never directed anything. I think he did the first. I watched some when I was on a Nightbreed kick. I watched some old interview with him. It's like an hour BBC documentary type thing or something where he talked about and he was like not a punk guy, like kind of like a gothy
Yeah.
punk-ish guy, and like had like a theater troupe he was doing
I knew that.
before he did all
Yeah.
this. So it's
Right.
kind of an interesting
Jogging my
story,
memory.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
he's an interesting guy. And he has his fan base. Like people still ride
yeah.
for Clive Barker.
Clive Barker reminds me of heavy metal. You know what I mean? It's like there's some cool stuff in it, but you have to like, but there's a lot. It's like it's a little too much like pervy, whatever shit. Just, you know, I don't know. It's like,
Do you think that do you think we regard that as pervy, and that's just kind of the European sensibility of where it used to be? Maybe.
maybe, I don't know. It just comes across to me as like R-rated, you know, skin flick type shit a lot of times.
Yeah.
Playboy cartoon, you know what I mean? It's just like that kind of shit. So it's like it's there's, I guess it's like fun or whatever, and like kind of edgy or whatever, but it's like it feels like there's less substance to it a lot of times. So I'm kind of like whatever. So, and sometimes I don't care. Like I'll grab a Richard Corbin thing or whatever, you know, and there's going to be tons of like whatever in the Richard Corbin shit. But you know, sometimes I don't care, and it's fine. But you know, most times the stuff I'm grabbing, I want a balance. I want like the aesthetic values I like, but also like some substance and depth to it. And I want to be able to get something. I want a thing that's going to give me some reason to come back to it a bunch. I don't want a thing that I'm just going to digest and whatever. I mean, I do sometimes, but that's not the stuff I'm keeping. You know what I mean? It's not the stuff that's going to stay here. It's the stuff I'm going to read one time. I'm going to toss it.
Yeah. And some of the earlier heavy metal stuff definitely has a eroticism to it, but there's some stuff that kind of has a kind of a depth to it that are harder to come by, because you know they had the reputation of it being a, you know, somewhat of a fantasy eroticism, and for some reason, like, that must have been big, like in the 70s. Like people, there must have been, you know, dudes and fans and women, I'm sure too, that just were really into, you know, eroticism and illustration and stuff, you know?
I mean, I don't hate on us. I really like Philip Kaza, and Passenger Press did a reissue of this book Chris Cool he did. That's incredible. And it's just straight up like psychedelic erotica, basically. But it's awesome. Like
it
aesthetically, it's incredible.
But a lot of that heavy metal stuff hasn't aged well.
No.
But it also was formative for me, like when I was able to peek through it when I was a kid, to understand that comic books just aren't Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man, but like there was more to it. Like I remember like seeing it, being a little confused, obviously titillated, but understanding that there's the medium has a wide scope.
I mean, I came to that stuff much later, and I feel like my education with comic books has been kind of, I wish it had been a bit more gradual, and like I had kind of got, because I feel like I would have gotten into more of the stuff a little sooner, but it was like when I was first finding the stuff that wasn't superheroes, it was probably initially like Gaiman and Alan Moore stuff, probably. And even that's like not that far out from that stuff. And then it was like Chris Ware. And it's like that stuff just like so far removed from all. So it was sort of like I don't know, very disjointed, and sort of having to like go back and fill in all these holes, which is why I'm like on probably now on this like 70s, 80s kick and looking at all this Euro stuff.
Yeah. It definitely took, I remember when I was in college and I was on a job. I was on a PA job, and like I definitely was a comics fan, and I was talking with some other PA about comic books, and there was this female, and she totally just like sunned me because I didn't know who Daniel Clowes was, and like I really didn't know. So it was that moment where I very much like what you're talking about, that like that defining moment of crossing a line of like, oh, like there's all of this other stuff that's way cooler than what I'm into. So I better get on that level and check that out, because whatever tip this person is on is way, way cooler than what I'm on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like discovering punk for me. You know what I mean? It was like finding music that wasn't the stuff that was getting played on the radio or getting played on MTV, and like realizing there was all kinds of incredible stuff out there. Like, you just have to, you got to hunt it down. You know what I mean? Or you got to find somebody, you got to find a mentor or whatever to guide you.
Do you have that like sense of like almost like a shame in what you used to be into?
No,
that's good then.
No, I don't care. I mean, it's like, for me, I feel like, person, you like what you like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's like essentially like drivel, like whatever, you know what I mean? And like I said, I still like, there's still a spot in my heart for all like old X-Men stuff. And, I find myself wanting to buy back some of those older superhero things, and going through like the quarter bins and stuff. Every now and then I'm like, maybe I should just rebuild like my Image Year One collection, and just every now and then I can kind of like flip. But I don't know. It's like that stuff, like you just can't read it. You can't read it. So like,
hard.
I don't know. What's the point? I have so many comics that like, I've got more comics than I need right now of stuff that's like good.
Yeah. So
like, why sort of like fill it with all the stuff that's like definitely not good? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to take up the space.
But what is that thing inside of you that's saying, no, I want that? Is that nostalgia?
It's nostalgia. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing keeping me from selling a box of Star Wars toys in the attic or whatever. I think it's nostalgia. Yeah. I think it's just trying to hold on to like the feeling I had when I was a kid, when I first, looked at that first issue of Spawn and was blown away by it. Like, yeah, I think it's wanting to hold on to that, have that feeling again. I want to flip through Spawn because I want to feel that.
Yeah.
But, it's like, I will flip through it every 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why take up the space just to do, like, it just seems kind of silly.
You can never really go home. Like,
no, I mean, yeah. And what's the point of like sort of being subsumed in nostalgia? You know what I mean? Like, why not be I don't know, be more mindful of like the present and moving forward. I think I don't know. I don't want to get sucked in. I feel like I would very easily get sucked into like that, chasing that, which I think is probably why a lot of these people that collect stuff, collect toys or whatever, like they're chasing those feelings or whatever.
Yeah, I find that it's mostly, and it's a wonderful thing, the people I speak with, there's always that, it always starts from childhood, no matter what they're into. It's always something from childhood. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. But like, that's the thing, is like those Star Wars toys in the attic, or, the first issue of Youngblood, that's not going to give me any fuel now for what I need to do now, in terms of like art, creative, socially, like it's not, I can't get anything out of it now. All it's given me now is nostalgia for like what I felt as a kid, like, which is like not super helpful. And it's not, I don't know, I find it a little bit of that's fine, but like too much of that I think could maybe be a bit unhealthy. I would much rather be like making my brain bigger and my creative sensibilities, expanding those, rather than sort of like getting stuck or trying to go back to like something that appealed to me as like when I was 12, like
right.
I was an idiot when I was an idiot 2 years ago. You know what I mean? So like, how much more of an idiot was I 30 years ago?
Right. Do you think you're going to be reading comics well into, I mean, is it cemented? Is it something that you're here to stay?
I mean, you go in and out of it, but it's like the same way. Like I haven't read. I've probably only read a handful of books in the past year.
Right.
Now I start picking up some books again. So, it just comes in waves of what you have time for and what's grabbing your attention or whatever.
That's the one thing that stuck around with me throughout my whole life. I've been through in phases of in and out where I'm obsessed with certain things and I want to have them around, and I want to kind of create a sense of stability and, my own sense of roots. But that's my own thing, just because like I moved around a lot when I was a kid. But comics has definitely stayed, and that's persisted throughout. And I could see myself, always having that in my life, reading comics.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had them. So like even when I had purged a lot of my stuff, and that's the thing too, is like when I went through the first phase of purging stuff, like I was volunteering at the anarchist info shop that had a lending library.
Cool.
And so when I purged all my comics, or the majority of my comics, I moved them into the library. So it was like, I mean, I sort of got rid of them, but I also just sort of moved it into into a different location, essentially.
How'd that go? How'd that go over with the people?
Oh, fine. Yeah, people. I mean, some of that stuff. They didn't care. Sure, people didn't care for some of that. Because a lot was garbage, and people at the time could tell better than I could that some of it was garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said with the shot. It's like you sort of like living collector-wise, sort of like living vicariously through these other things, which I think gives me a sort of like privilege of like, oh, I don't have all this shit taking up. It's not taking up space at my house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it is sort of taking up space just somewhere else.
If you and I know you have to go, we'll wrap it up soon. But if you could, and if you had a different sensibility, what would you collect? What are some things that you see out there? You're like, oh, like I'm kind of into that, but I have to resist.
Well, I don't know if I ever resist. No. I don't know if I ever. There's nothing I'm like resisting. It's more of a matter of like accumulating too much of the things I like. I think if money wasn't an issue, I would get art, probably more art. I would have more stuff hanging on the walls. I mean, and that's really, I mean, it's more of like a means and space, the right space to have those things in. But yeah, I don't think there's nothing that I like would like to be collecting that I'm not. I would maybe, you remember Battle Beasts?
Yeah.
I have a box of those. I would maybe get more of the, like, that one thing that's like, I would sort of like essentially like meaningless thing I would probably collect if I just had more money and space. And
are you a low key toy nerd?
Maybe. I mean, I still had all this stuff. Not really. I mean, I got a box because I keep talking about it. I got a little shoebox of Battle Beasts.
Yeah.
I probably have a big tote full of the old 80s Star Wars toys still in the attic.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten rid of pretty much everything else. Legos. I got a ton of Legos, but we had a little game group and we were playing this game Mordheim, which
I've heard of that. I've heard of that.
It's basically like Warhammer Light, but anyway, without getting too into it, the Legos we instead of buying like a bunch of stuff to play the game, we just reused the Legos for the game.
Made a play set at a game set.
Yeah, I mean,
that's cool.
Yeah, people would know the game, like could kind of picture it, but yeah. So I was getting like a bunch of that shit at one point just because we were playing. We were using it. We were using it for the play of the game, whatever. So
cool.
It was fun, but no, I mean, I don't have a lot of stuff. I go to a ton of garage sales and estate sales because I'm looking for stuff for the record shop, but I end up finding a lot of like knickknacks and stuff, but I try to be pretty good about not bringing too much of that stuff home.
Yeah, that could overflow real quick when you get into tchotchkes and knickknacks and stuff.
We've been good about I've been pretty good about like when I get stuff, it's like usually because I'm trying to upgrade something at the house rather than just accumulate more things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like having too much stuff. I could probably stand to get rid of some stuff.
How do you pack light when you go on the road?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Even I'm getting even crazier about it. Like when we went to Europe just now, I like a tiny school, my high school bag.
Uh-huh.
And clothing wise, I started bringing like t-shirts that I want to get rid of.
Uh-huh.
Like old, just plain shirts I want to get rid of. I bring all and old underwear or whatever, any old clothes that I need to trash.
Yeah.
I'll bring on tour now. I'll wear it till it's ready to go, and then I'll just trash it on tour. So like, it gets lighter and lighter as I go.
Yeah.
That's like my new tour thing.
I like it.